in the movie Spartacus, the rebel slaves of Rome moved from city to city to city, looting, stealing, taking. That may not have been portrayed in the movie, but that is the case. That is what communism does today. It moves from country to country, looting, leaving in its wake devastation, death, mayhem, despair, and it can only move on to a new target. It can't sustain itself without acquiring more. Pancho Villa, the bandito in Mexico in the mid-1800s, never robbed his last stagecoach. He lived to rob again and again. Bonnie and Clyde, Barker, Pretty Boy Floyd, these gangsters, they must continue to steal. It's one bank job after another until they're shot. If they succeeded in robbing all the banks, I guess that would be the end of the road. And these looters, gangsters, thieves, robbers would fall on hard times without any new source of revenue. This is Marxism. If you understand gangsters or a group of banditos or pirates, you understand Marxism. It's not an economic theory. It's not a political theory to create utopia on earth. It is a theory of how to conquer, to steal, to manipulate, to subvert, to get control of countries so that they can take the loot. That's Marxism. There are two types of people that become pawns of Marxists, and these are: one, criminals with no moral standards, and number two, the naive and the simple-minded. The Cold War is ongoing. The Cold War never ended. The United States never won the Cold War. We were not primarily engaged in the defeat of the Soviet Union. We were engaged in the defeat of Marxism in all its forms worldwide. Some of us failed to realize that Marxism is alive and well inside the United States. And it's in Latin America, of course, Cuba, and much of Europe, and of course Red China, and many countries in Southeast Asia. Even the Islamic terrorists and radicals are aided and abetted by Marxists. They're working hand in hand, and have been, I know, since the 70s. That's 30 going on 40 years. That these thieves, these looters, these vandals have been helping the radical Arabs. They're working together against the goal, against the West, their goal of subverting and taking control of the West, including the United States. One of their tools in the early stages is to attack the conservative side through smears. John Elliston is mentioned here in words. He is an example of a so-called author who simply attacks through innuendo members of the conservative side by bellyaching about FEMA, pointing to a non-existent problem. He was attempting to undermine confidence in Bush and the Bush administration, saying that Bush and company were obsessed with terrorism when what the American people really need is somebody to protect us from the storm. What if the water rises? We need sandbags. We don't care about terrorism. That's what this fruitcake Ellison, this is the lies of Ellison, who is just the same type of creature as James Bamford, both of whom relied upon documents obtained through the Freedom of Information Act to find supposed reasons to bash the United States government. It didn't matter that they accused George Bush of doing things that were planned under John F. Kennedy, that were planned to overthrow, contingency plans to overthrow Fidel Castro, an evil despot from hell. If ever a man needed to be overthrown, it was Fidel Castro. Yet Bush is made to take the blame and the heat for these plans made during the John F. Kennedy administration in regards to Castro. They try to imply, these smear artists try to imply that George Bush perpetrated a false flag operation by planning and carrying out the events on 9/11. All this came out in 2 books well before the three silly boys made a video they entitled Loose Change. Why they call it Loose Change, I don't know. I guess that sounds better than tomato sandwich. They decided to call it Loose Change. Maybe they were trying to imply that they made the video with nothing but pocket change. Somebody bought them a brand new big industrial strength camera. I don't know what they needed it for, but they sure walked around with a big fancy looking camera as though they were trying to impersonate a news crew, a television news crew. That camera could not have been cheap. If these are 3 miserable students scrounging for loose change, I wonder who bought them that camera and why. Maybe because they simply wanted it, so somebody gave it to them. Find out who supplied these 3 boys with that fancy camera, and you might have a link to who supplied the 3 boys with the information that they used to make their silly video. Which, to the best of my knowledge, the video contains 0 truth, 0 reality, 0 facts. It is garbage from the start to the finish, pure garbage.